now for the first time on TV. The stories and reports of the people who fly and the aircraft they fly. And you are invited in an exciting, pulse-pumping new television series designed for everyone who has ever gazed skywards and dreamt of slipping the bonds of Earth. The Aviators.
This week on The Aviators, we give you a look inside one of the most advanced air traffic control towers in the world. We check out a small-town air show, the Quesnel Skyfest. We walk you through a walk-around inspection. And we talk to legendary bush pilot and TV host John Lovelace.
Yeah, well, my love of airplanes actually started in high school.
From the Boundary Bay Airport, this is The Aviators.
Almost all of us have taken a flight to one of the world's major airports. Air traffic control is responsible for the safe movement of aircraft all around the world. One of the most recognized symbols of air traffic control is a control tower. Today, The Aviators is going to take you behind the scenes.
Air traffic control is a vital part of keeping the skies safe and people moving across the continent. NAV Canada, the group responsible for air traffic control in Canada, operates 7 area control centres and 41 airport air traffic towers across the country. These towers and control centres handle almost 6 million aircraft movements annually. Today we are taking you inside the tower of Toronto's Pearson International Airport, the busiest airport in Canada. The Aviator's own Curtis Arnold is an air traffic controller with NAV Canada. Curtis spoke with fellow air traffic controller Gary Hines, who works at the Toronto Tower.
Air traffic controller essentially is to make sure planes stay apart. We ensure safe separation of airplanes from the time they leave the gate to the time they get airborne and to the time they reach their destination. We make sure that planes taxi when they taxi along the ground. We do so with instructions. They taxi to and from the runway, and landing and takeoff clearance is also provided. We basically are the start of your trip and the end of your trip.
Worldwide, air traffic is controlled by 2 types of facilities. Radar stations, known as en route or area control centers, monitor the majority of air traffic, while airport towers monitor traffic within a control zone around an airport.
The control zone around Toronto is 7 nautical miles, and we work up to 2,500 feet above sea level. So basically with our elevation, we go about 2,000 feet above the ground, and that's our airspace. Every airplane and vehicle that enters our taxiways and runways has to have permission to do it. Any vehicle has to have permission to come on because the pilots are very busy in preparing for flight or at the end of their flight, and we take away that added stress and responsibility. We watch out for the pilots.
The tarmac of an airport is divided into several distinct sections. The apron is the paved area directly around the terminal, gates, and hangars of the airport. From here, airliners move out onto the taxiways, which are the roadways of the airport. Taxiways connect and intersect with various runways around the airport. Within the control tower, there are a number of positions that coordinate movement around these different areas.
Typically we run 5 positions up here with the supervisor. We have one ground controller here. He basically will work this half of the airport from where we're standing, what you see facing south towards the city. And again, we also have our other north ground controller to my right and works everything from this part to the north. From that point, the ground person will hand that off to our tower controller. We take the airport and we divide it in half. One tower controller who deals with landing and taking off of one runway. The other tower controller is seated to the south side here, and he works the landing and departing runway down there.
Coordinating takeoffs and landings is one of the crucial parts of an air traffic controller's job. Aircraft routinely have to land on a runway that another aircraft took off from just moments before. The tower controller has to ensure that these aircraft have a safe separation between them.
We have a plane that will have to, what we call, line up on the runway. They'll have to taxi onto the runway, get ready for departure, while we still have another arrival coming in. And that arrival could be as close as 4 or 5 miles away. In the meantime, the tower controller is having the previous arrival clear the runway safely so that the departure airplane can then take off safely, which then would have a domino effect of having that next arrival land safely.
The Toronto Tower is unique as it's the first tower in the world to use an entirely paperless touchscreen control system. Traditionally, towers and area control centers use a combination of paper flight progress strips and computer software. In the Toronto Tower, flight strips are entirely computerized, allowing flights to easily flow between the various tower positions. Gary gave us a closer look at how the system works.
This display here is for our tower controller who's working the north runway right now. So we see this screen here is all the arrivals landing. in Toronto, proposed within the next 10 to 15 minutes on the north runway. And we also have the information that the airplanes are landing on the south runway. This part here shows us that the plane is lining up on the runway, ready to take off, and momentarily that plane will be cleared for takeoff and will be shown here. Right now, this airplane on our ground radar is this yellow dot right here and has been cleared for takeoff and will accelerate down the runway. Once this plane departs the runway, we will then see it show up on our airborne radar and it will be tracked out of Toronto.
The airborne radar has a range of 12 miles. This includes some overlap with airspace that's controlled by the en route control centers. As aircraft are coming into land, they transition in much the same way from one radar screen to another.
So what we see here is, for example, a WestJet 528. He's 2 miles final from landing on our north runway, runway 05. And this shows us that he's a Boeing 737. He's at an altitude of 1,300 feet, and right now he's doing 140 knots. So as we transition from WestJet landing on this runway here, we'll see a target land develop right here momentarily, and that'll be him tracking down the runway, which is in black here. All these gray areas are taxiways, which are used for planes taxiing to and from the runway, either ending or starting of their trips.
So the controllers just cleared WestJet to land.
As we can see, he's rolling out and decelerating down the runway here.
So some of our viewers that may be a little bit familiar with air traffic control may be familiar with the concept of a flight strip. Can you explain what that's about?
This is the only information that we need to be able to move that airplane safely, either to the runway or away from the runway. His call sign is WestJet 528, airplane type, and that's the gate he's going to, C24.
Air traffic control is an extremely stressful job. While Toronto's systems may make things seem like a video game, each of those dots on the screen represents a very real aircraft weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds and with hundreds of people on board. The job takes months of training, and controllers are required to very strictly follow various regulations. But according to Gary, it's a job he would easily recommend to anyone.
I would absolutely recommend this job to a lot of people. Would I do this job again? In a minute. I love this job. I think it's one of the best jobs going. We have a great environment. We have technology that is world class. We have a great group of people that we all work together with. And this is my office. I come to this every day. What don't you love about this? Out the window, you have great sceneries. You have phenomenal sunsets and sunrises. You see thunderstorms coming. You see airplanes that you wonder how can they get in the air holding 350 people on a 15-hour flight going overseas to Japan or China, and you wonder how can that thing get in the air? And it does. And it's actually very amazing.
The Aviators has covered the two largest air shows in North America, AirVenture and Sun & Fun. In June 2010, we sent a crew into a small town in British Columbia to cover one of the smallest. The picturesque town of Quesnel, British Columbia, played host to its first ever air show, the Quesnel Skyfest. This one-day event attracted performers from all over Western Canada and the Northwestern United States. The Aviators TV crew had a chance to get out on the tarmac at Quesnel Regional Airport and talk to a number of the performers and pilots who flew in for the event.
This is the first time that Quesnel's had an air show. It's going to be very exciting for them. I'm sure they're hoping to make it into an annual event, so we're hoping this one goes off really well. It'd be really nice to see another small airport like this having an annual air show. We need that in Canada. I think it's very exciting. My name is Ron Andrew, and I fly Pitts S2B. It's 260 horsepower, and it really does its thing. The aircraft is tube-in fabric with wood spars in the wing and wooden ribs. It's very light, weighs slightly over 1,100 pounds. It'll cruise at 170 miles an hour. Put the nose down a little bit, it'll be over 200 miles an hour right away, and it'll go straight up for a long time. It'll fly upside down as good as it flies right way up. It doesn't care which way it's going.
So my instructor and I would
The big shows are a lot of fun, but there are a lot of pressure. There's lots going on. The small shows, you get intimate with the crowd. You're right there with the pilots and with the people. And the whole community gets behind a show like this. And it's so good to see. You go drive through Quesnel and you see Welcome Skyfest and Skyfest this weekend and lots happening in the media. And it's so good to see a town get together, a region get together to support this event.
The show's organizers were able to bring together an impressive number of performers for a first-time air show. This included a Russian Yak and 2004 Canadian National Aerobatic champion Jim Rimac.
I fly a 1952 Mark IV Harvard, this machine right behind me. It was an intermediate trainer during the war. It trained hundreds of thousands of Commonwealth pilots during World War II And after this machine, they went on to fly fighters, Hurricanes, and Mustangs, and Spitfires, and that sort of thing. So this is a post-war machine, 1952 model, and it was stationed throughout various bases in Canada. And I got it about 3 years ago. I used to fly the Pitt Special, and I would like to fly Hurricanes and Spitfires and Mustangs someday, so this is a great lead-in for that. What I love about this machine is that I've got the privilege to fly a vintage machine, and this one in particular, it trained several thousand pilots during the wartime and post-war. It's quite an honor, and I'm an Air Force veteran too, so it's sort of part of the heritage, I guess.
Making their way up from Washington was the team from Bud Granley Air Shows. A father and son team, Bud and his son Ross fly a Yak 55 and a Yak 18T respectively. The Yak 55 is a thoroughbred aerobatic aircraft capable of tumbling and other complex aerobatic maneuvers. The Yak 18T, on the other hand, is a 4-seat aerobatic capable passenger aircraft. The Yak 18T's 360 horsepower radial engine can propel the aircraft to speeds of over 180 miles per hour. While they may be an unlikely pair of aircraft, the Granleys put on an extremely entertaining air show. Also making an appearance was Team Rocket's Ken Fowler and Eric Hansen.
The airplanes we fly are called Harmon rockets. They're actually custom built. They're a home built aircraft. I built my rocket, Eric built his rocket. I've been flying mine since '97, so it's got a fair few hours on it. It's a very fast, very powerful, lightweight, home built airplane.
My rocket, actually I built from a kit. It's an F1 rocket. Kitted out of Texas. I don't think they're kitting them anymore, but they might make them again here at some point. It's a terrific airplane. Came in 3 big boxes. I put it together over the course of about 13 months or so. People ask how I got it together in 13 months. I just tell them, well, I didn't watch TV for a year. And that's basically frees up a lot of time to work on an airplane. A fantastic airplane to fly. It does about 230 to 240 miles an hour on cruise. The airplane will climb about 3,500 to 4,000 feet a minute. It's got a good payload and good range.
According to Ken, the Quesnel Air Show grew quickly from a small fly-in, and the air show performers were more than happy to give the organizers a break when it came to price.
Anytime a new show comes along, performers tend to give breaks to the air shows, just to get them started. I mean, this is a small town. Small towns, it's a little tougher for them to raise the funds and get the sponsors to put the show together. So performers usually help out a little bit.
The event went off without a hitch. Organizers estimate about 2,500 people showed up to enjoy the show. Spectators were treated to a final formation flyby performed by Team Rocket and Jim Rymack. The Skyfest, combined with a stop by the 2010 Midnight Sun Challenge, is sure to make Quesnel a well-known aviation destination. The pilot in command of an aircraft, or PIC, is the person who shoulders the burden of responsibility for the safety of the flight. This includes all aspects of flight operations, passenger safety, and aircraft preparedness. Before an aircraft leaves the apron, pilots must perform a thorough pre-flight inspection known as a walk-around, as Curtis Arnold shows us.
We're here today with Wes Popplewell, Manager of Flight Standards at the Delta Connection Academy. Wes, can you tell us a little bit about the Delta Connection Academy and what it's for?
Yes, sir. Our objective is to train zero-time pilots to go all the way to the airlines. The program takes about 9 months, 9 to 12 months, and we offer everything from private to commercial.
Fantastic. Now, one of the reasons we're specifically here to talk to Wes today is about the walk-around inspection, or the pre-flight inspection. Wes, why is it very important to do a walk-around and a comprehensive pre-flight?
The best way I can describe it is an airplane is in the air, and we as humans do not fly. So if we have an issue that we can find on the ground that we encounter up in the air, we can't just step outside the airplane and fix that problem. So the most important thing we need to do before any flight is our pre-flight.
Excellent. So the Delta Connection Academy has provided an aircraft for us today. Wes has set it up with a few squawks, and in a few minutes we're going to do a walk around and see what I can find. So we're standing here in front of a 1981 Cessna 172P. This aircraft has been set up by Wes with a few snags that I'm supposed to fly on my walk-around inspection. In accordance with the pilot's operating handbook, we're going to begin our walk-around inspection inside the cockpit. Aircraft are required to operate with an approved pilot's operating handbook. We have one of those here. Aircraft are also subject to a number of different inspections, so we want to check and make sure that we have the appropriate paperwork in order to go flying. This is the horizontal stabilizer and the elevator. And we're going to check for general condition and fasteners. Next we'll check the rudder. So we want to check the rudder for freedom of movement. We want to make sure that all the connections to the controls are appropriate, that they have cotter keys on them, and that the tail's in generally good condition. These are static wicks. These are required if you're going to fly in clouds. It helps dissipate any static electricity that may develop on the aircraft. We'll have a look underneath the aircraft here at the trim actuator. And one of the things that I've noticed here is that there's a cotter pin missing. Because this aircraft's been specifically set up to have a number of discrepancies, I've got a checklist here where I'm supposed to write down. We'll see how I did at the end. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the flaps. From this vantage point up on the top of the wing, you get to have a general look at the condition of the wing itself. We can see that there's one missing fastener here. It looks like a screw popped off. That won't keep us from going flying today. The most important part, though, is to look at the fuel cap. We want to open it up and look in the tank. If we had a dipstick, we could check and make sure how much fuel is in there. But it's also very important to make sure that the fuel cap is on tight. As a kid, if you've ever blown over the top of a straw in a glass of water and it sucks the water up the straw, if the fuel cap is not appropriately tightened on the top of the wing, it'll siphon the fuel out of the airplane when you fly. Come around here to the front, and you can see the number of very important fasteners that hold the cowling together, specifically the nose bowl of the aircraft together, are missing as well. The pre-flight inspections normally end up back at the cockpit because it would normally be time to go flying. But we've identified a number of squawks we've got to go check into. All right, we finished the walk-around challenge here. I got a clipboard with a list of a number of discrepancies I've found, but I've got some blank spots. So we're going to talk to Wes and see what I caught and see what I missed.
All right.
All right, Wes, I noticed that there were some missing seatbelt pieces in the back seat.
That's correct.
2 instances of missing cotter pins, both on the left landing gear axle and on the trim actuator.
Good job on detail.
Noticed that there were some missing fasteners that look kind of important in the cowling.
Very important.
Also noticed somebody was unkind and shoved a piece of paper up the exhaust stack.
That's not good.
That's not good. That could be expensive. From a paperwork perspective, we noticed that someone had transposed the numbers in the aircraft ident on the C of A. We also noticed that the aircraft registration was pink, which means it's a temporary registration. Since that was sent in at the beginning of the year, we should have received our permanent registration by now. But I got some missing spots here, so what did I miss?
Yes, you do. There's the nav lights were swapped.
Well, that's kind of important.
And safety wire missing from the right brake.
Okay, so what that means is that where the brake caliper attaches, there's some safety wire to make sure that the bolts don't back out, and apparently I missed the fact that it was missing.
That's right. And then the pilot seat stop was missing.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, there's actually an airworthiness directive for that. And what happened was that those back stops were failing.
Okay, so an airworthiness directive is something that's issued by the FAA. It's generally type specific, so it must apply to the Cessna 172. And in this case, it would require all 172s to have this seat stop, and this one's missing.
That's correct.
What else did I miss?
That's it.
That's it? That's not bad. I missed 4 things, one of which is very specific to this aircraft. Well, thanks very much, Wes, for this opportunity. This is a great exercise to take pilots like myself to make sure we don't take too much for granted doing our walk-arounds.
Good job. Fly safe.
Thank you very much.
The Aviators is not only a show for pilots and aviation fans, it's also produced by pilots. The Aviators' creator and director, John Lovelace, took his first flight lesson in Brampton, Ontario in 1970. In 1979, he bought his first airplane, a Cessna 172 on floats. For 25 years, John was active in the construction business, serving as president and CEO of companies that would build more than 2,000 housing units. But his passion was always flying, and he would prefer a day at a fishing camp over life in the boardroom. This passion would take him all over Eastern Canada in a pair of Cessna 206 amphibians. In the 90s, John turned his attention to television production, and in the process produced almost 200 flying shows. That would make him one of the most recognized pilots in the country. Recently, John had a chance to sit down with our crews to discuss his history and future in aviation.
Yeah, well, my love of airplanes actually started in high school, and it was all about boats, not airplanes. For my class project, I built a hydroplane because I wanted to go fast on the water, and that was in grade 11. And I went through a progression of boats, and finally I had a boat when I was 25 that would go 80 miles an hour on the water. So I decided that the only way I could really get more speed was to put wings on it. I went out in 1979 and bought a 172 on Cap 2000 floats, and that was the beginning of a lifelong affair with this beautiful machine called an airplane.
Always a headstrong individual, John actually purchased the 172 before he had his pilot's license. This pushed John to get his license and led to what he describes as one of his fondest memories.
One of the happiest days of my life was when I soloed. And I was up there at 3,000 feet, and I looked down and I thought to myself, what am I doing up here? Because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to land the airplane. From there, I went on to floats and flew for a number of years, exploring Quebec and Ontario in the hinterland, doing some fishing, and it was just a great lifestyle. It was a lot of fun back then with my kids and my friends.
Like most pilots, John eventually developed a want for more horsepower and a need to go farther. In 1985, this led John to buy his first Cessna 206 amphibian.
The 206 amphibian gave me a lot more range and I could put a lot more in it. In fact, I remember on my first takeoff, I had asked the guy I had bought it from what I could do with the airplane. And he said, well, I'll tell you what you can do, John. You fill up the tanks, put 4 guys in it, and away you go fishing and burn off half your fuel, and then you can take off from the water. No problem. So I remember the first time I took off, the main runway wasn't usable, so I had to use a shorter 3,200-foot runway. I was charging down the runway with the 4 guys in the airplane and full fuel and all our gear, and I got thinking, this airplane doesn't seem to want to fly, and I thought, I wonder if this guy was leveling with me, if it would really do what he said it was going to do. But sure enough, as I got towards the end of the runway, finally I nursed it into the air, and that was my first flight with the 206. I will tell you that airplane was a water lover. It was nip and tuck sometimes, especially if there was no wind, if I'd ever get it in the air.
Flying in the 206, John ventured all across North America. Regardless of where he found himself, there was always a community of pilots with interesting stories to tell. This eventually led John into his second career in television production.
What I've noticed most about flying is the great camaraderie. It doesn't make any difference what you're flying, how much experience you have, or where you're flying. It's always the same. Also, flying around for years and years and years when I was doing the Wings Over Canada television series, we were always going into areas that we didn't have support, we didn't know anybody, and always the aviation community would come out and say, you want to borrow my truck, if you need a hand getting some fuel, whatever it was, everybody was really helpful. And I don't think it was because we were there with cameras, because sometimes we weren't there with cameras, and the camaraderie was the same. And so it's a club. Anybody who's a pilot, it's a club. The guy comes up here today and he's a 747 captain, or if he flies an ultralight, it doesn't make any difference. It's just that ability that we have to get up into the air and get away from the ground, and that gives us this unique bond that only pilots have.
In 2007, John traded in his floats for a twin-engine Piper. From the cockpit of his prized Navajo, he led over 100 airplanes across the country in 2009.
One of the biggest privileges I've ever had in flying was in 2009 when I got to lead 100 airplanes across the country for the celebration of the 100th anniversary of flight in Canada. And it was just terrific. We started off in Vancouver and ended up in Nova Scotia, ended up at Badek, which is where the first flight was. And it was terrific. Everybody got along really well. Everybody flew really well, and the camaraderie was great. There was a few little mechanical problems, there was weather issues, but everybody pitched in. And when we got there, it was very emotional. And I know there was a lot of teary eyes at our closing banquet, because we felt we'd really achieved something. We all knew, of course, that we were not going to be there for the next 100th year anniversary, but to be here flying in Canada at this time, this particular time in history, is a pleasure for all of us, and it was a wonderful moment.
Today, John routinely flies his Navajo all across British Columbia. With 2 television shows on the go, The Aviators and West Coast Escapes, John also is involved in the real estate business across BC. Regardless of his day job, John will always find a way to keep himself in the air.
The future of aviation, I think, is in the light sport end of the business. And these are a brand new generation of aircraft that are coming in, made out of composites. They're much cheaper than old style of putting airplanes together with rivets. These are great airplanes, but the problem is to keep one of these in the air is very, very expensive. And if I wasn't using it for business, I would never be able to rationalize the expense of a Navajo. But to be able to jump in my own airplane, which would be a composite, one of the new flying boats that they're making, would be just terrific. And I think that's where the future of this entire general aviation is going in the years to come.
The Aviators, for everyone who has ever gazed skywards.
For more information on today's segments, visit www.theaviators.tv.